Chapter 2, Surah Baqarah, Part 7, Section 32 of Chapter 2, verse 190 to 195. Jihad, main discussion. Fight in the cause of Allah those who fight you, but do not transgress limits, for Allah love not transgressors. And slay them wherever you catch them, and turn them out from where they have turned you out. For tumult and oppression are worse than slaughter. But fight them not at the sacred mosque, unless they fight you there. But if they fight you, slay them. Such is the reward of those who suppress faith. But if they cease, Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful. And fight them on until there is no more tumult or oppression, and there prevail justice and faith in Allah. But if they cease, let there be no hostility except to those who practice oppression. The prohibited month, for the prohibited month. And so, for all things prohibited, there is the law of equality. If then anyone transgresses the prohibition against you, transgress you likewise against him. But fear Allah, and know that Allah is with those who restrain themselves. And spend of your substance in the cause of Allah, and make not your own hands contribute to destruction, but do good, for Allah loves those who do good. Remarks. Jihad means struggle. Fighting a battle in the way of Islam is also a kind of jihad. Jihad can be divided into two types: defensive jihad and offensive jihad. This chapter, Chapter 2, forms the Ummah and provides guidance on defensive jihad. The Furqan, War Book, which starts at Chapter 3 and ends at Chapter 9, guides offensive jihad. Point 1. Defensive jihad above verses give guidelines on defensive jihad, as it says, "Fight in the cause of Allah those who fight you." Fighting to protect the life, honor, or property of a Muslim is a defensive jihad. There may be many forms of defensive jihad. Even a Muslim who has fallen into a river and is swimming to save his life is doing jihad because he is trying to save the life of a Muslim, his own life. If a robber attacks a Muslim and the Muslim fights to protect his life or property, then he is engaging in defensive jihad. The permission of the highest Islamic leadership, Caliph, is not required to fight a defensive jihad. 2. Offensive jihad. An offensive jihad is a war guided by the War Book, Furqan, of the Quran. The War Book starts at Chapter 3 and ends at Chapter 9. The span of the book is clarified in the introduction to the War Book given after this chapter. The permission of the highest Islamic leadership or his authorized representative is necessary to fight an offensive jihad. Actually, such a jihad can only be planned and executed by him. Offensive jihad is fought by al-Mudakin, who are oath-bound, bay'ah, to the highest Islamic leadership to fight for the cause of Allah. They are pious people and strictly follow the guidance of the Quran. In light of the Quran, the offensive jihad can be carried out to fulfill the following aims only: to remove the taghut, powers, ruling idolaters, so that they can accept Islam safely and peacefully; to neutralize the munafiqun, hypocrites, with a view to keep Islamic society supportive to the highest Islamic leadership; to maintain peace among Muslims when one of the groups of conflicting Muslims has denied to obey the mediation of the highest Islamic leadership. The above points are deliberated as under 2.1 to remove the taghut, powers. According to the War Book, Chapter 3 and ends at Chapter 9, Islam was to be preached in Jerusalem through struggle and warfare, jihad. Jerusalem, home of peace, spans from Morocco to the Pamirs. This span is clarified in the introduction to the War Book given after this chapter. The aim of the offensive jihad was to remove the taghuts, powers, ruling over the idolaters, and to preach Islam among them peacefully and effectively. The offensive was directed against the people of the book as well, who were protecting the idolaters. The War Book ordered their subjugation and brought them under a system where they were compelled to pay jizya. This matter is deliberately discussed in Chapter 9. Care was to be taken against the indiscriminate use of force if believing people were living among the idolaters. This matter is discussed in Section 5 of Chapter 48. Jerusalem is already established by the Sahaba and their immediate followers. There are no idolaters in Jerusalem at present. Now, the war book may be used to maintain Islam in Jerusalem. Preaching Islam in the way of the war book, in the way of jihad, is not allowed beyond Jerusalem. Such efforts have failed in Spain and Eastern Europe. Islam is supposed to be preached beyond Jerusalem by Sufis and Dalis, as it was preached among Turkic, Mongol, Indian, Indonesian, and Malaysian people. This is clarified in the introduction of Part 2 of 3 of this Tafsir. 2.2 To neutralize the munafiqun, hypocrites. Invading hypocrites for the cause of Islam is an offensive jihad. The hypocrites are known as Muslims, but they oppose the highest Islamic leadership, Caliph. The signs of hypocrites are discussed in Section 3 of this chapter. The hypocrites who need to be neutralized are identified in Chapter 4. 2.3 To maintain unity among Muslims. If two groups of believers are in conflict, offensive jihad can be carried out as follows. If two parties among the believers fall into a quarrel, make ye peace between them. But if one of them transgresses beyond bounds against the other, then fight ye against the one that transgresses, until it complies with the command of Allah. But if it complies, then make peace between them with justice, and be fair. For Allah loves those who are fair. The believers are but a single brotherhood. So make peace and reconciliation between your two contending brothers, and fear God, that ye may receive mercy. Al-Quran 49-9-10. 3. Conclusion 3.1. Only Chapter 4, Chapter 9, and Chapter 49 give executive orders of offensive jihads. Chapter 4 deals with hypocrites. Chapter 9 deals with idolaters, and Chapter 49 deals with opposing believers. 3.2 The Quran does not permit fighting against the people of the book unless they are allied with the pagans in hostility, are protecting them, or have initiated an attack. In light of the policies outlined in the Quran, the Arab capture of Spain and territories beyond cannot be termed as Islamic jihad. Similarly, the Ottoman capture of territories beyond Constantinople and some of their military expeditions beyond Constantinople cannot be considered Islamic jihad. The battles to capture Constantinople were Islamic jihad because it was the seat of the Byzantine Empire, which ruled over Arabs. The Prophet, PBUH, foresaw the capture of Constantinople and provided instructions accordingly. 3.3 Fighting against hypocrites is a particularly tricky task. A Muslim king, emir, or elected ruler, even under the highest Islamic leadership, may appear hypocritical to a religious activist. However, they cannot initiate jihad against him unless he is unequivocally proven to be a hypocrite through specific actions. A hypocrite must be identified by the highest Islamic leadership, or caliph, and only he can order jihad against him. It is also worth noting that the highest Islamic leadership can choose to avoid waging war against the hypocrite, as the Prophet, PBUH, did. 3.4 Offensive jihad is thoroughly guided by the Furqan, war book, which spans from Chapter 3 to Chapter 9. It also prepares the fighters, known as al-Muttaqin. A warring people, including the Sahaba, Tabi'in, and Tabi'in, could not preach the religion unless they were specially prepared according to Allah's guidance. Section 33 of Chapter 2, verse 196 to 203. Hajj, and complete the Hajj or Umrah in the service of Allah. But if you are prevented, send an offering for sacrifice, such as you may find, and do not shave your heads until the offering reaches the place of sacrifice. And if any of you is ill, or has an ailment in his scalp, in compensation of not shaving the head, either fast or feed the poor or offer sacrifice. And when you are in peaceful conditions, if anyone wishes to continue the Umrah onto the Hajj, he must make an offering, such as he can afford. But if he cannot afford it, he should fast 3 days during the Hajj and 7 days on his return, making 10 days in all. This is for those whose household is not in the sacred mosque. And fear Allah, and know that Allah is strict in punishment. For Hajj are the months well known. If anyone undertakes that duty therein, let there be no obscenity, nor wickedness, nor wrangling in the Hajj. And whatever good you do, Allah know it, and take a provision for the journey. But the best of provisions is right conduct. So fear me, O you that are wise. It is no crime in you if you seek of the bounty of your Lord. Then, when you pour down from Arafat, celebrate the praises of Allah at the sacred monument, and celebrate His praises as He has directed you, even though before this you went astray. Then depart from the place, when all people depart, and ask Allah for His forgiveness. For Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful. So when you have accomplished your holy rites, celebrate the praises of Allah, as you used to celebrate the praises of your fathers. Yeah, with far more heart and soul. There are men who say, Our Lord, give us in this world, but they will have no portion in the hereafter. And there are men who say, Our Lord, give us good in this world, and good in the hereafter, and defend us from the torment of the fire. To these will be allotted what they have earned, and Allah is quick in account. Celebrate the praises of Allah during the appointed days. But if anyone hastens to leave in 2 days, there is no blame on him. And if anyone stays on, there is no blame on him if its aim is to do right. Then fear Allah and know that you will surely be gathered unto Him. Discussion. The verses deliberately describe the requirements of Hajj. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, performed the Hajj once and established the tradition, encompassing the directives guiding us to perform the Hajj. Section 34 of Chapter 2, verse 204 to 212. Men in the life of this world and hereafter. There is the type of man whose speech about this world's life may dazzle you, and he calls Allah to witness about what is in his heart, yet is he the most contentious of enemies. When he turns his back, his aim everywhere is to spread mischief through the earth and destroy crops and cattle. But Allah loved not mischief. When it is said to him, Fear Allah, he is led by arrogance to crime. Enough for him is hell, an evil bed indeed. And there is the type of man who gives his life to earn the pleasure of Allah, and Allah is full of kindness to devotees. O you who believe, enter into Islam wholeheartedly, and follow not the footsteps of Satan, for he is to you an avowed enemy. If you backslide after the clear verses have come to you, then know that Allah is exalted in power wise. Will they wait until Allah comes to them in canopies of clouds with angels, and the question is settled? But to Allah do all questions go back. Ask the children of Israel, how many clear signs we have sent them. And whoever changes Allah's favor after it had come to him and except disbelieve, kufr, then surely Allah is severe in punishment. The life of this world is alluring to those who reject faith, and they scoff at those who believe. But the righteous will be above them on the day of resurrection. For Allah bestows His abundance without measure on whom He will. Section 35 of Chapter 2, verse 213 to 214. Straight path in the world of adversities and sufferings mankind was one single nation, and Allah sent messengers with glad tidings and warnings, and with them He sent the book in truth to judge between people in matters wherein they differed. But the people of the book, after the clear signs came to them, did not differ among themselves, except through selfish contumacy. Allah by His grace guided the believers to the truth concerning that wherein they differed, for Allah guides whom He wills to a path that is straight. Or, do you think that you shall enter Jannat without such as came to those who passed away before you? They encountered suffering and adversity, and were so shaken in spirit that even the apostle and those of faith who were with him cried, "When the help of Allah will come." Verily, the help of Allah is near. Discussion. Early human communities were uniform and singular. It was necessary to send guidance, warnings, and good news about the afterlife. The subjects on which people differ were also addressed. Many prophets were sent, but the religion is one. Allah should not be blamed for creating divisions among mankind. It was people who divided due to the selfish contumacy of their leaders. In this situation, Allah has guided the believers. Now their path is hard, painful, and dangerous, but it leads to Jannat. Success demands hardship. Section 36 of Chapter 2, verse 215. Spending in charity. They ask you what they should spend. Say, whatever you spend that is good. It is for parents and kindred and orphans and those in want, and for wayfarers. And whatever you do that is good, Allah knows it well. Discussion. The order of persons receiving the charity is notable in the verse. Parents, kindred, orphans. Those in want, wayfarers, spending on charity for preaching of religion, education, social development, and so on, comes after the above. Section 37 of Chapter 2, verse 216 to 218. Fighting in the path of Allah, fighting is prescribed for you, and you dislike it. But it is possible that you dislike a thing which is good for you, and that you love a thing which is bad for you. But Allah knows, and you know not. They ask you concerning fighting in the prohibited month. Say, fighting therein is a grave. But graver is it in the sight of Allah to prevent access to the path of Allah, to deny Him, to prevent access to the sacred mosque and drive out its members. Tumult and oppression are worse than slaughter. Nor will they cease fighting you until they turn you back from your faith if they can. And if any of you turn back from their faith and die in unbelief, their works will bear no fruit in this life and in the hereafter. They will be companions of the fire and will abide therein. Those who believed and those who suffered exile and fought in the path of Allah, they have the hope of the mercy of Allah, and Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful. Discussion, struggle, and warfare has many benefits for nation building and scientific development. The mankind has developed through struggle and warfare. The best struggle is struggle for the cause of Islam. Section 38 of Chapter 2, verse 219 to 220. Wine, gambling, charity, and orphans. They ask you concerning wine and gambling. Say, in them is great harm, and some benefits for men, but the harm is greater than the benefits. They ask you how much they are to spend. Say, what is beyond your needs. Thus, Allah does make clear to you His laws, in order that you may consider in this worldly life and in the hereafter. They ask you concerning orphans. Say, the best thing to do is what is for their good. If you mix their affairs with yours, they are your brethren. But Allah knows the man who means mischief from the man who means good. And if Allah had wished, He could have put you into difficulties. He is indeed exalted in power, wise. Discussion. People continued to ask questions even after hearing the story of the cow. Thank God that He has not commanded us to donate 10 or 20% of our total income to charity every month. What is beyond your need varies for each individual. The more one believes in God, the less one worries about tomorrow. Thus, a believer relies on God and gives more to charity. The verses address orphans whose mother has remarried. In the Islamic view, a child is considered an orphan if his/her father is deceased. A person marrying an orphan's mother can mix the orphan's property, left by their deceased father, with his own, but he must act justly. According to Section 3 of Chapter 4, the orphan's property must be released as soon as the orphan reaches marriageable age. This matter is deliberately discussed in Section 3 of Chapter 4. Section 39 of Chapter 2, verse 221. Marrying unbelieving woman. Do not marry unbelieving women until they believe. A slave woman who believes is better than an unbelieving woman, even though she allures you. Nor marry to unbelievers until they believe. A man-slave who believes is better than an unbeliever, even though he allure you. Unbelievers do beckon you to the fire, but Allah beckons by His grace to the Jannat and forgiveness, and makes His signs clear to mankind that they may receive admonition. Section 40 of Chapter 2, verse 222 to 223. Approaching woman. They ask you concerning women's courses. Say, they are a hurt and a pollution, so keep away from women in their courses, and do not approach them until they are clean. But when they have purified themselves, you may approach them in any manner, time, or place, ordained for you by Allah. For Allah loves those who turn to Him constantly, and He loves those who keep themselves pure and clean. Your wives are as a tilth unto you, so approach your tilth when or how you will, but do some good act for your souls beforehand, and fear Allah, and know that you are to meet Him, and give good tidings to those who believe. Section 41 of Chapter 2. Oath-taking, and make not Allah's name an excuse in your oaths against doing good, or acting rightly, or making peace between persons. For Allah is one who hears and knows all things. Allah will not call you to account for that which is unintentional in your oath, but He will call you to account for that which your hearts have earned. And Allah is oft forgiving, most forbearing. Discussion 1 should not refrain from doing good deeds, such as guarding a just cause, or making peace between people, on the plea that they are oath-bound to an army, organization, or person. A soldier in an oppressive army cannot excuse his actions by claiming that he was simply following orders due to his oath. Some people, especially some Arabs, have the habit of uttering meaningless oaths, such as, "Wah, by Allah, I will not go. Wah, by Allah, now I must go," and so on. Allah will not hold them accountable for such oaths.